do have a lot of material to cover, but I'm going to see if I can stick to the 3 hours. I always do try to leave some time at the end for questions, but feel free to chat them in the chat panel on your right. I do answer them real time, okay? So today we're talking about writing the clinical study report. I do enjoy writing these documents. They do require a lot of analysis or analytical processing. So they're a little more challenging than some of the other documents in different ways, but they're a lot of fun. So what we're going to learn about today is translating the protocol and the data or statistical output into some kind of clear, concise submission document, in this case, the CSR. We're going to describe the elements required for the clinical study report and the appendices, which are a very important piece. We'll talk about different types of statistical outputs, how we handle those, tables, listings, figures, etc. And we're going to talk about the different phases of drug development, how they are similar in some ways and different in ways when it comes to writing the CSR. And we will also talk about utilizing style guides and templates, which I am a huge advocate of. So we're going to start a little bit about writing style. I usually talk about this in my classes because it's very important to understand how we're writing and for whom we are writing. So your audience for a CSR is a pretty big sort of pool of people, okay? You're going to have your regulatory review. Ultimately, this is the end user, right? Here in the U.S., we have the FDA, the 3 major branches, CDER, CBER, and CDRH. And of course, there are other national authorities. Most of us are working globally now, so we're starting to get very familiar, if we're not already, with a significant number of international authorities, most prominently in the EU and Japan, but of course, there are others as well. You may be working with the CRO. The CRO may be writing your CSR for you, or maybe they managed your study, so you want them to review it. In some cases, site personnel will review it, specifically the investigator. Many European countries, for instance, require the investigator to sign off on your CSR. It's not something we require here in the U.S., at least not currently, but it is required for many EU countries. Obviously, you're going to have internal reviewers. It's not going to go out to any of these external reviewers before it's reviewed and collaborated with your internal reviewers. So the whole key of writing any regulatory document is that everyone who reads it takes away the same message. Everyone should have the same takeaway. So in terms of writing style, there are just some key messages that's important to understand. You want to ideally use terminology that is familiar to your audience. Remember that this is a technical document as well, so it's a balance between how you write sort of for a broad audience and still making sure that it's technically sound. You want to write to inform rather than impress. I always like to say we're sort of telling a story, but we're not writing fiction. So we want to make sure that we get the message across. That's the whole point of this document. It's a technical document. Formatting and use of styles that are embedded in your formatting, ideally in your template, is almost as or just as important as content. This is a sort of a critical thing that I learned. I had to learn this actually early on. My assumption initially when I first started writing documents was content, content, content. And while the content is critical, of course, how you write it, how it's formatted, and how it flows makes a big difference in understanding. If any of you have ever written a CSR before or read a document that you had to revise or update, sometimes you'll see where things are sort of all over the place and the flow isn't very good, and it really makes it hard to sort of keep track of what's going on. So what we want to do is eliminate that kind of confusion, okay? One of the ways we can do this is by using a template. If you're not familiar with a template, we'll talk about templates a little bit. They're critical. There is a template that I've actually provided. This is what I consider to be a decent template. It's for oncology. It has all kinds of little pieces here that we can talk about in a little bit, but instructional text in italics, it's got blue sample text, suggested text in red, standard text, etc. And as you go through this template, what you'll see is it gives you really good ideas of what should be in here. The instructional text often comes in templates from the guidances as well. So as you go through this, if you choose to, this is just here for your reference, what you'll start to see is all these different sections where you use basically standard text and just supply some additional data. It really makes writing any kind of document much more easy, much more consistent, and consistency is really important. So templates I really can't stress them enough. You have to understand certain things about linking. The CSR has a lot of internal links and external links. If you're using electronic publishing, make sure you understand how to do these things. The FDA requires blue text 255. Yes, it's a specific color. So you'll get to be intimately familiar with where that color is in your text color wheel. Cross-references are usually internal links. They're in that same blue 255, but everything is going to eventually be PDF'd, and external links and through bookmarks in Adobe. So there's a lot of pieces, moving parts that go into this. So understand your company's standards for those things.